The stars were quiet tonight. That was the first thing Yuna noticed as she sat at her control station on Aegis Prime. The deep space monitoring station hung in the darkness between two solar systems, listening to the galaxy's whispers. Most nights, she heard the usual sounds: cargo ships calling home, military patrols checking in, and the endless chatter of a busy universe. But tonight was different. Tonight, the stars seemed to be holding their breath. Yuna stretched her arms and looked. At the clock, 3 hours left on her shift. She had been working the night watch for 2 years now, and she knew every sound the galaxy made. The soft hum of peaceful trade ships, the sharp reports from military vessels, the excited calls from exploration teams finding new worlds. She also knew the sounds of trouble. The first sign came at 23:47 station time. A weak signal, barely stronger than background noise. Yuna frowned and adjusted her equipment. The signal was coming from the Helios Nebula, a dangerous region where few ships traveled. She turned up the volume and listened carefully. Static, more static, then something else. Help. Please. Anyone. The voice was strange, not human, but speaking galactic standard, the common language used by most spacefaring species. The words were broken. Frightened Yuna sat up straight and began recording. This is Gentle Current. Kethmori trading vessel. We need help. They are hunting us. Yuna's blood ran cold. She had heard of the Kethmori. They were a peaceful people who lived on waterworlds. They looked like tall, thin humans, but with blue skin and large eyes. They were traders and artists, not fighters. If someone was hunting them, it meant trouble. We have 3,000 passengers. Many younglings, please. The void hunters found us. The signal crackled and faded. Yuna worked quickly, trying to boost the transmission. She had to hear more. She had to help. They called themselves Sektar. They want to take us as slaves. We have been running for 6 hours. Our engines are failing. The voice was getting weaker. Yuna could hear the fear in it, the desperate hope that someone, somewhere, was listening. We are in the Helios Nebula. Coordinates follow. Please. Our children. They are just children. The transmission ended. Yuna stared at her screen, her hands shaking. She had just heard 3,000 people calling for help. 3,000 innocent lives, including children, being hunted by slavers. She hit the emergency alarm. Captain Dojun was asleep when the alarm woke him. He had been dreaming of home, of the mountains of Korea where he grew up. But the sharp sound of the emergency signal brought him back to reality fast. He rolled out of bed and grabbed his uniform. Bridge, report, he said into his cum unit as he ran through the corridors of his ship, the Thunder's Edge. Sir, we just received an emergency transmission from Aegis Prime, his communications officer replied. A Kethmori vessel is under attack in the Helios Nebula. They're requesting immediate assistance. Doyen reached the bridge in record time. The Thunder's Edge was a patrol vessel, not a warship, but it was the closest human ship to the nebula. His crew was already at their stations, their faces serious. Play the transmission, Doyen ordered. The bridge filled with the frightened voice of the Kethmori captain. Doyen listened in silence, his jaw getting tighter with each word. When it finished, he turned to his tactical officer. Minho, what do we know about the Sektar? Minho pulled up the files on his screen. They're a reptilian species from the Outer Rim. They've been expanding their territory for the past 50 years. Intelligence reports say they use captured populations as slave labor, and the Kethmori peaceful traders. Their home world has low gravity and calm weather. They're not built for fighting. Even their strongest warriors are weaker than human. Children, Dojun nodded grimly. The Kethmori wouldn't last long against dedicated slavers. He looked at his navigation officer. Samin, how long to reach the Helios Nebula? At maximum burn, 18 hours, sir. Too long. Far too long. By the time they arrived, the Kethmori would be dead or enslaved. Doyen felt anger rising in his chest. These were innocent people, families with children, calling for help, and he was too far away to save them. Sir Minho said quietly, I'm showing multiple Sektar ships in that area, at least 12 heavy cruisers. We wouldn't stand a chance alone. Doyen was about to respond when his communications officer spoke up. Sir, incoming priority message from Terra Command. The main screen flickered to life, showing the face of Admiral Jin. Even through the static of the long-range transmission, her expression was hard as stone. Captain Dojun, she said without preamble. We received the Kethmori distress call. What is your status? Admiral, we're 18 hours out at maximum burn. The Sektar have them outnumbered and outgunned. We need more ships. Agreed. I am authorizing Operation Lifeline. Every available vessel is being redirected to the Helios Nebula. You are to proceed immediately and provide whatever assistance you can. Doyen felt his heart skip. Operation Lifeline was the code name for the largest possible fleet mobilization. It hadn't been used since the war ended 20 years ago. Admiral, with respect, we're talking about alien civilians. The Council will ask questions about such a large deployment. Admiral Seo Jin's eyes flashed. Captain, those people called for help. That's all I need to know. The fleet is already moving. Eternal Vigil, Stormbreaker, Ironwill, and 14 other ships are changing course as we speak. But Admiral, we're 72 hours away at best. Even if we push every ship beyond safe limits, then we push them beyond safe limits, Esiogen said simply. Those people don't have 72 hours. They might not have 18, but they called for help, and we're going to answer. The transmission ended. Doyen stared at the blank screen for a moment, then turned to his crew. They were all looking at him, waiting for orders. You heard the Admiral, he said. All hands to emergency stations. Engineering, I want everything we can get from the engines. Navigation, plot the fastest course to the Helios Nebula. Communications, send a message to the Kethmori vessel. Tell them help is coming. As his crew rushed to their tasks, Doyen thought about what they were doing. 17 human ships, racing across the galaxy to save strangers. Most species would call it foolish. Some would call it impossible. But Doyen had grown up on Earth, where people learned early that sometimes you had to stand up for those who couldn't stand up for themselves. Where the strong protected the weak, not because they had to, but because it was right. The Thunder's Edge turned toward the Helios Nebula and began to burn hard through space. Behind them, across human space, more ships were doing the same thing. The galaxy was about to learn something important about the people from the little blue world. When someone called for help, humans answered. The Galactic Council chamber was in chaos. Representatives from 47 different species shouted at each other in a dozen languages. Emergency sessions were rare, but this one had been called within hours of the human fleet mobilization. Ambassador Hyenwu sat calmly in the human section, watching the panic around him. The tall, bird-like Vektari were flapping their wings in distress. The rock-skinned Thulin were grinding their teeth. Even the usually peaceful Mirathi were hissing in their snake-like voices. This is madness, screeched the Vektori representative. 17 warships for a single distress call. The humans are preparing for war. They violated 3 territorial boundaries without permission, rumbled the Thulin ambassador. This is an act of aggression. Council Prime Zathera, a wise old being with 4 arms and silver skin, raised her hand for silence. Ambassador Yunwar, the council demands an explanation. Why has your species mobilized such a large fleet? Hunwu stood slowly. He was a small man compared to most of the other representatives, but his voice carried clearly through the chamber. The explanation is simple. People called for help. We answered. But these are not your people. The Vektari squawked. They are Kethmori, strangers. They are people. Hyenwu replied simply. That is enough. The chamber erupted again. The aliens could not understand the human response. Most species helped their own kind. Sometimes their allies, but never strangers. It made no sense to risk so much for beings they had never met. The Kethmori vessel was in neutral space. Hyunwoo continued when the noise died down, and they'd sent a distress call on open frequencies. Any species could have answered. We chose to respond. But 17 ships, the Thulin representative boomed. You could conquer entire systems with such a force. We could, Hyunwoo agreed, but we will not. These ships have one mission, to protect innocent lives. When that mission is complete, they will return to their normal duties. Far from the council chamber, the human fleet raced through hyperspace. Aboard the massive dreadnought, Eternal Vigil, Fleet Commander Jisoo watched the tactical display. Red dots showed the positions of human ships scattered across 3 sectors, all burning toward the same destination. Status report, she ordered. Righteous Fury is pushing 130% reactor output, her aide reported. Captain Taeyeon says his engines are screaming, but they'll hold. Stormbreaker, 145% and climbing. Captain Nari has her entire crew on rotation schedules. They're working shifts that would kill most species. Jisoo nodded. Human ships were built different from others. They had to be. Earth was a harsh world with crushing gravity and violent storms. Human technology was designed to survive the worst conditions imaginable. Ian Will reports similar status. Captain Jihoon says his ship is shaking apart, but it's still flying, and the smaller vessels all reporting green. The destroyers Swift Justice and Burning Star are actually ahead of schedule. Captain Heian thinks they might reach the nebula before the larger ships. Jisoo smiled grimly. The galaxy thought humans were soft because they looked weak compared to the massive Thulin or the armored but humans had something else, the ability to push beyond their limits when it mattered. On the bridge of Thunder's Edge, Engineer Sunwoo watched his displays with growing concern. The ship's reactor was running at 140% capacity, far beyond safe parameters. The engine room was hot enough to cook most alien species, but his human crew worked in the heat without complaint. Sir, he called to Captain Doyen, we're pushing the engines harder than they've ever been pushed. If we keep this up, we might have a containment failure. Doyen looked at the star charts. They were still 16 hours from the nebula. Too long. Can you give me more power? Sir, I can push her to 145%, maybe 150%, but if something goes wrong, then we fix it, Doyan said simply. Those people don't have time for us to play it safe. Sun Wu nodded and returned to his controls. This was why he had joined the human fleet. Not for glory or conquest, but for moments like this. When good people needed help, you gave everything you had. Meanwhile, in the Helios Nebula, the Sector fleet moved like predators, closing in on wounded prey. Warpack leader Vorthok stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the screens that showed the fleeing Kethmori vessel. Status of the prey. He growled. Their engines are failing, his weapons officer reported. They cannot maintain current speed much longer. Vorthok was pleased. The Kethmori were valuable. Their weak bodies made them perfect for delicate work in the slave mines. The younglings would be especially useful. They could fit into spaces adult slaves could not reach. What of these humans? Our intelligence reported. Vorthok asked. His communications officer made a sound that might have been laughter. 17 ships, moving toward us at high speed. They will arrive in approximately 65 hours. 65 hours. Vorthok's eyes glowed with amusement. The hunt will be over in 6 hours. We will have the Kethmori secured and be halfway home before these mammals arrive. The Sector had ruled through fear for centuries. They were large, strong, and ruthless. Their ships were built for war, covered in armor and bristling with weapons. They had conquered dozens of worlds and enslaved millions. Show me these humans, Vorthok commanded. The screen displayed intelligence files on the human species. Studied the images with growing contempt. Humans were small, soft-looking creatures with thin skin and weak bones. They had no natural armor, no claws, no venom. They looked like prey, not predators. These are the beings that threaten us. He laughed. They look like the Kethmori, but even weaker. The files say they come from a world called Earth, his officer reported. High gravity, violent weather, dangerous predators. But they themselves appear harmless. Vorthok dismissed the threat with a wave of his clawed hand. Deathworld creatures often look dangerous but prove weak in real combat. These humans are probably no different. Back on Thunder's Edge, Communications Officer Dayan was trying to reach the Kethmori ship. The signal was weak and full of static. But finally she made contact. Gentle Current, this is the human vessel Thunder's Edge. We received your distress call. Help is coming. The reply came back filled with hope and desperation. Human ship, this is Captain Melthara of the Gentle Current. We are so grateful, but you must hurry. The Sector ships are closing in. We have perhaps 5 hours before they catch us. Gentle Current, we have 17 ships heading your way. Can you maintain current speed? We will try, but our engines are failing. We have 3,000 passengers, including 800 younglings. If the Sector take us, they won't, Dayan said firmly. I promise you that. The human fleet is coming, and we don't leave people behind. The transmission ended, but Dayan's words echoed through space. Across the galaxy, other species monitored the communications. They heard the promise of a small, seemingly weak species to protect strangers from one of the most feared military forces in known space. Some called it foolish. Others called it impossible. But as the human ships pushed their engines beyond all safe limits, burning through space with desperate speed, the galaxy began to realize something important. The humans were not joking. They really were coming to help, and they were coming fast. In the council chamber, the debate continued. But now it had a different tone. The aliens were beginning to understand that the humans were not like them. Where other species saw risks and calculations, humans saw people in need. This is unprecedented, Council Prime Zethara said quietly. In all the history of the Council, no species has ever mobilized such a force for strangers. Ambassador Heinwu stood again. Then perhaps it is time for a precedent. Perhaps it is time for the galaxy to learn that some things are worth fighting for. As the human fleet raced toward the Helios Nebula, word spread through the galaxy. The Deathworlders were coming, and they were bringing their peculiar brand of justice with them. The Spear of Terra dropped out of hyperspace like a sword cutting through silk. Commander Jayan gripped his command chair as the ship's systems came online. Around him, his crew worked with the smooth efficiency of people who had trained for this moment their entire lives. Status report, Jayan ordered. We're at the edge of the Helios Nebula, his navigator, Youngman, reported. Scanning for the Kethmori vessel. Found them, said Science Officer Hayon. They're 15,000 kilometers away. Engines failing, moving at quarter speed. Jayan's face went hard. And the 12 ships in a hunting formation. They're closing in fast. The Kethmori have maybe 30 minutes before they're caught. Jayan nodded. The Spear of Terra was a fast-attack cruiser, built for speed and hitting power. She wasn't designed to fight 12 enemy ships alone. But she was what they had. Youngman, take us to the Kethmori ship. Full speed. Sir, that will put us right in the middle of the Sector formation. Good. That's exactly where we need to be. The Spear of Terra shot forward through the colorful gas clouds of the nebula. Behind them, space twisted as the ship's engines pushed reality to its limits. They had trained for this, arriving first, holding the line until help could arrive. Aboard the Gentle Current, Captain Melthara watched her screens with growing despair. The Sectar ships were so close now that she could see their weapon ports glowing with deadly energy. Her own ship was dying around her, systems failing one by one. "Captain," her communications officer called, "I'm reading a new contact. Single ship, moving very fast. No, the signature is different. Wait, it's transmitting on human frequencies." Melthara felt her heart skip. Could it be? Had the humans really come so far to help strangers? "Gentle Current. This is Commander Jayan of the human vessel Spear of Terra. We're here to help." The voice was calm, steady, completely without fear. Melthara almost wept with relief. "Commander, we are so grateful, but you are only one ship. The Sectar have 12 warships. Ma'am, we're humans. We don't give up easy. Please maintain your current course. We'll handle the Sectar." On the bridge of the Septar flagship, Warpack leader Vorthok watched the human ship approach with amusement. It was smaller than his own vessel, and he had 11 more ships just like his. "So," he growled, "one of the mammals has arrived early. How? Convenient." His weapons officer checked his displays. "The human ship is fast, but lightly armored. Our plasma cannons will destroy it quickly." "No," Vorthok said thoughtfully. "Let them come close. I want to see what these Deathworlders are made of before we kill them." The Spear of Terra swept into the middle of the Sectar formation like a meteor. Jayan stood on his bridge, watching the massive enemy ships surround him. Each one was twice the size of his cruiser, covered in armor and bristling with weapons. Sir Youngman said quietly, "We're heavily outnumbered." "I noticed," Jayan replied calmly. "Open a channel to the Sectar flagship." The main screen flickered to life, showing the reptilian face of Vorthok. The Sectar leader was huge, with scales like armor and teeth like knives. He looked at Jayan with cold, predatory eyes. "So," Vorthok hissed, "you are the human who thinks he can stop us. You are smaller than I expected." Warpack leader Vorthok Jayan said politely, "I am Commander Jayan of the Terran fleet. I'm here to ask you to release the Kethmori civilians and withdraw from this system." Vorthok's laughter was like breaking glass. "You ask? You are one small ship against 12 warships. You have no authority here, mammal." "I have all the authority I need," Jayan replied. "Those people called for help. That makes them our responsibility." "Your responsibility." Vorthok's eyes glowed with amusement. "Tell me, human, what gives you the right to interfere in Sectar business?" Jayan's expression didn't change. "The right of any decent being to protect the innocent. You're hunting defenseless civilians. That ends now. And if I refuse, then we'll make you stop." The threat hung in the air between them. Vorthok studied the human's face, looking for fear, for doubt, for any sign of weakness. He found none. The human looked back at him with calm determination, as if facing 12 warships was just another day at work. "You cannot be serious," Vorthok said. "You are one ship. We are 12. Simple mathematics says you cannot win." "Math isn't everything," Jayan replied. "We're human. We're good at beating impossible odds." Communications Officer Dayan opened a channel to all frequencies. Her voice carried across the nebula, clear and strong. "This is the Terran fleet. To all beings in distress, help has arrived. We are here to protect you. To those who prey upon the innocent, your victims are now under our protection. Stand down or face the consequences." The message reached every ship in the nebula. The Kethmori passengers cheered with relief. The Sectar crews growled with anger. And across the galaxy, other species listened with growing amazement. "You heard my communications officer," Jayan said to Vorthok. "This is your last chance. Release the Kethmori and withdraw." Vorthok's patience finally snapped. "Enough. You want to die for these weaklings, so be it. All ships, open fire on the human vessel. Show them what happens to those who challenge." The Sectar Empire. The space around the Spear of Terra lit up with weapons fire. 12 massive plasma cannons fired at once, each one capable of cracking a planet's surface. The energy beams converged on the human ship in a display of raw, destructive power. The plasma struck the Spear of Terra directly. The ship's shields flared brilliant white as they absorbed the incredible energy. The bridge shook, and damage reports started coming in from all sections. "Shields down to 60%. Tactical Officer Minho reported. "Hull integrity holding." Vorthok stared at his screens in shock. His most powerful weapons had barely scratched the human ship. The plasma cannons that had destroyed countless enemy vessels had failed to penetrate the human shields. How? He whispered. Jayan smiled grimly. "We're from Earth. We're harder to kill than we look." The human ship began to move. It didn't flee or retreat as Vorthok expected. Instead, it accelerated toward the nearest Sectar vessel, its weapons charging. Sir Youngman called from the helm, targeting the lead destroyer. "Weapons ready. Fire." The Spear of Terra's railgun spoke once. A solid slug of metal accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed slammed into the Sectar destroyer. The enemy ship's armor, designed to stop energy weapons, crumpled like paper. The destroyer broke apart in a shower of debris. Impossible, Vorthok breathed, but the human ship wasn't finished. It spun on its axis with impossible grace. Its pilot threading between the massive sectar vessels with reflexes that seemed superhuman. Another railgun shot took out a second destroyer. Their pilot, Vorthok's weapons officer, said in amazement, "He's flying like he was born in space." He wasn't, Vorthok realized with growing horror. He was born in high gravity. Our gravity would crush him, but their gravity made him strong. The Spear of Terra danced through the sectar formation like a predator among prey. Every movement was precise, every shot deadly. The human ship struck with surgical accuracy, targeting engines and weapon systems, crippling rather than destroying. "They're not trying to kill us," Vorthok's tactical officer reported. "They're disabling our ships." "Why?" Vorthok demanded. "The bridge of the Spear of Terra," Jaeyon answered a question his enemy couldn't hear. "Because we're not monsters. We fight to protect, not to destroy." The battle was quickly turning into a rout. The sectar ships were powerful but slow, designed for overwhelming firepower rather than precision. The human ship was faster, more agile, and its weapons were devastatingly effective. Sir Haon called out, "I'm detecting multiple hyperspace signatures. Large ships, coming in fast." Jaeyon checked his displays. "How many?" 16 contacts. All showing human signatures. A new voice filled the communication channels. Admiral Eseojin's voice was calm, but carried the weight of absolute authority. "This is Admiral Eseojin of the Terran Fleet. Sectar vessels. You have exactly 10 seconds to power down your weapons and surrender. Any ship that continues to threaten civilians will be destroyed." Vorthok looked at his screens in disbelief. The space around the nebula was filling with human ships. Not just one or two, but an entire fleet. Dreadnoughts, cruisers, destroyers, all moving with the same deadly precision as the first ship. 10 seconds, the Admiral repeated. Vorthok's hands shook as he reached for the surrender controls. The mighty Sectar Empire, terror of the galaxy, was about to surrender to a species they had never even heard of a day ago. But as he looked at the human fleet, beautiful and terrible in their perfect formation, he finally understood. These were not ordinary beings. These were the children of a world that had forged them in fire and gravity and endless struggle. These were Deathworlders, and they had come to protect the innocent. Warpack leader Vorthok stared at the human fleet in growing terror. 16 ships had appeared from hyperspace in perfect formation, their weapons already locked onto his vessels. Each ship moved with deadly purpose, like hunters that had found their prey. "Sir," his communications officer said with a trembling voice, "the human admiral is waiting for your response." Vorthok looked at his tactical display. His proud fleet was scattered and broken. 3 ships were already destroyed. 5 more were badly damaged. The remaining 4 were surrounded by human vessels that seemed to dance through space. "All ships," he ordered reluctantly, "powered down weapons, prepared to surrender." But his weapons officer suddenly spoke up. "Sir, wait. Look at the human ships. They're not that much bigger than ours. We still have numbers." Vorthok studied the display more carefully. The human fleet was impressive, but not overwhelming. His remaining ships still outnumbered them. Maybe there was still a chance. "You're right," he growled. "These mammals may be clever, but they're still just mammals. All ships, prepare for final attack. Target their flagship." On the bridge of the Eternal Vigil, Admiral Eseojin watched the sectar ships power up their weapons again. She had hoped they would surrender peacefully. Now she would have to show them why that would have been the smart choice. "Admiral," Captain Jisoo said quietly, "the sectar are charging weapons. They're not backing down." "I see that," Eseojin replied calmly. "Send a message to all ships. Protect the civilian vessel at all costs. Rules of engagement are now weapons-free." The order went out across the human fleet. On 17 different bridges, human commanders prepared for battle. They had traveled across the galaxy to save strangers. Now they would have to fight for them. The battle began when the sectar fired first. Their plasma cannons lit up the nebula with deadly energy. The attacks were coordinated, all targeting the human flagship. Vorthok wanted to cut off the head of the snake. The Eternal Vigil took the full force of the sectar attack. Her shields flared as they absorbed the incredible energy. The massive dreadnought shook but held steady. "Shields at 70%, reported the tactical officer. "Hull integrity solid." Admiral Eseojin nodded. "Return fire. Show them what human weapons can do." The human fleet responded with devastating precision. Their railguns fired in perfect synchronization, sending solid projectiles screaming through space at impossible speeds. The sectar had never faced kinetic weapons before. Their shields, designed to stop energy beams, were useless against solid matter. 3 sectar ships died in the first volley. The metal slugs tore through their hulls like paper, causing massive internal explosions. Vorthok watched in horror as ships that had terrorized the galaxy for decades were destroyed in seconds. "Impossible," he whispered. How can they be so strong? On the Spear of Terra, Commander Jayan was coordinating the smaller human ships. His vessel moved through the battle like a dancing flame, striking at enemy weak points and then vanishing before they could respond. Youngman, bring us around behind that cruiser, he ordered. Minho, target their engine section. The human ship spun through space with impossible grace. Pilot Youngman had grown up on a world where gravity was 3 times stronger than most planets. Flying in normal space felt like floating to him. Target acquired, Minho reported. Firing. The railgun shot struck the Sectar cruiser's engines perfectly. The ship went dead in space, unable to move or fight. Around the battlefield, other human ships were doing the same thing. Precise, calculated strikes that disabled rather than destroyed. Sir, Science Officer, Hyan called out, why aren't we destroying them completely? We have the firepower. Because that's not who we are, Jayan replied. We're here to protect people, not to kill enemies. If we can stop them without killing them, that's what we do. Vorthok was beginning to understand the true horror of his situation. The humans weren't just defeating his fleet, they were playing with it. Every shot was perfect, every movement calculated. They fought like they had been born for war. Sir, his tactical officer reported, they're targeting our weapons and engines. They're not trying to kill us. Why? Vorthok demanded. We would show them no mercy. Maybe that's why they're winning, the officer replied quietly. On the Stormbreaker, Captain Nari watched her crew work with pride. They had been pushing their ship beyond safe limits for over a day, but now they were here, fighting for people they had never met. Engineering reports engines at 150%. Her second-in-command reported. We're running hot, but everything's holding. Good, Nari said. Target that destroyer. Disable their weapons. The human ship fired its main gun. The destroyer's weapon systems exploded in a shower of sparks. The enemy ship was helpless, floating in space like a broken toy. Across the battlefield, the story was the same. Human ships moved with deadly efficiency, their crews working together like parts of a perfect machine. They had trained for this moment, prepared for it, dreamed of it. The Iron Will caught a Sectar cruiser in a crossfire with 2 other human ships. Captain Ji-hoon coordinated the attack perfectly, each ship firing at precise intervals to overwhelm the enemy's defenses. This is for the Kethmori children, he said quietly as he gave the order to fire. The Sectar ship's shields collapsed under the coordinated assault. Its weapons went dead, its engines shut down. Another predator had been turned into prey, but the most impressive display came from the human marines. As Sectar ships were disabled, boarding pods launched from the human vessels. The marines moved through enemy ships with the same precision as their spaceborne brothers. Sergeant Taehan led his squad through the corridors of a captured Sectar cruiser. The aliens were huge, strong, and well-armed, but they had never faced humans in close combat before. Remember, Taehan told his men, we're here to capture, not kill. Use stun weapons unless they give us no choice. The Marines moved like ghosts through the ship. Their gravity-trained bodies made them faster and stronger than the Sectar expected. Their teamwork was perfect, each Marine covering his brothers. Human Marines have boarded the Bloodfang, Vorthek's communications officer reported. They're fighting through the ship. How many? Vorthek demanded. 12 Marines, sir, against a crew of 300. Vorthek felt sick. 12 humans were fighting 300 Sectar warriors, and from the sounds of battle, the humans were winning. On the bridge of the Eternal Vigil, Admiral Seo Jin watched the battle with satisfaction. Her fleet was performing perfectly. Every ship, every crew, every weapon was working exactly as designed. Admiral, Captain Jisoo reported. We've disabled 8 Sectar ships. The remainder are trying to retreat. Let them go, Seo Jin ordered. We're not here to conquer territory. We're here to save lives. But Vorthok was not ready to retreat. His pride, his reputation, his entire way of life was being destroyed by these soft-looking mammals. He had one last weapon to use. Activate the quantum torpedo, he ordered. Target the Kethmori vessel. His weapons officer stared at him in shock. Sir, that weapon will destroy everything within 100 kilometers. Our own ships will be caught in the blast. Then we all die together, Vorthok snarled. If we cannot have the slaves, no one can. The massive torpedo launched from the Sectar flagship. It was a weapon of pure destruction, designed to crack planets. Against the fragile Kethmori ship, it would be like using a star to light a candle. On the Spear of Terra, Heian detected the launch immediately. Sir, massive energy signature. The Sectar have fired some kind of planet-killer weapon at the civilian ship. Jaehan looked at his display. The torpedo was moving fast, but his ship was faster. There was only one way to stop it. Young men intercept course, full speed. Sir, that torpedo will destroy us too. Then we stop it before it gets to them. Jaehan said simply. We didn't come all this way to let those people die. The Spear of Terra raced to intercept the quantum torpedo. Other human ships were converging on the same target, but they were too far away. Only Ji-yoon's ship was close enough. This is Commander Jaein to all ships. He broadcast, we're going to stop that torpedo. Take care of the Kethmori for us. The human ship positioned itself between the torpedo and the civilian vessel. Gillen's crew worked frantically to boost their shields, to find some way to survive what was coming. "Sir," Youngman said quietly, "it's been an honor serving with you." "Same, here," Jahan replied. "For Earth, for humanity, for those who cannot protect themselves." The quantum torpedo struck the Spear of Terra at full power. The explosion lit up the entire nebula like a newborn star. When the light faded, the human ship was gone. But the Kethmori vessel was safe. On the Eternal Vigil, Admiral Seo-jin watched the sacrifice with tears in her eyes. Then she turned to her weapons officer. "Target the Sektar flagship," she ordered, her voice cold as space itself. "Full power, no mercy." The human fleet opened fire as one. The Sektar flagship, already damaged from the battle, could not withstand the concentrated fury of 16 human ships. It broke apart like glass, taking Vorthok and his dreams of conquest with it. The battle was over. The Sektar were defeated. But the victory had come at a terrible cost. Commander Jayan and his crew had given their lives to save strangers. It was the most human thing they could have done. The silence after the battle was profound. Where moments before space had been filled with weapons, fire, and explosions, now there was only the quiet hum of engines and the soft glow of emergency lights from damaged ships. Admiral Seo-jin stood on the bridge of the Eternal Vigil, looking at the tactical display. The Sektar fleet was broken. 8 ships destroyed, 4 more disabled and surrendering. Her own fleet had suffered only one loss, but it was a loss that would be remembered forever. "Admiral," Captain Jisoo said quietly, "we're receiving a transmission from the Kethmori vessel. Put it through." The main screen showed Captain Melthara of the Gentle Current. The alien captain was weeping, a strange sight since Kethmori tears were silver and flowed upward instead of down. Her large eyes were filled with gratitude and sorrow. "Admiral Seo-jin," she said, her voice breaking, "we owe you everything. Your commander Jae-hyun, he saved us all. 3,000 lives, including 800 children. We will never forget his sacrifice." Seo-jin nodded slowly. He did what any human would do. He protected those who couldn't protect themselves. "But why?" Melthara asked. "Why would strangers risk so much for people they had never met?" The question hung in the air. It was the same question being asked across the galaxy as news of the battle spread. On 1,000 worlds, in 100 different languages, beings were trying to understand what they had just witnessed. "Because it was the right thing to do," Seo-jin said simply. "That's reason enough." The rescue operation began immediately. Human medical teams beamed over to the Gentle Current to help with the wounded. The Kethmori had been running for days, and many were sick or injured from the stress. Dr. Ji-won worked alongside Kethmori healers in the ship's medical bay. The alien patients were amazed by human gentleness. They had expected warriors, but found caregivers instead. "Your species is very strange," one young Kethmori said to Dr. Ji-won. "You fight like demons, but heal like angels. We're just people." Dr. Ji-won replied as she treated a child's broken arm. "We do what needs to be done." Meanwhile, the surviving Sektar prisoners were being processed. The aliens were confused and frightened. They had expected to be executed or enslaved, as they would have done to their enemies. Instead, they received medical care and proper food. Captain Nari of the Stormbreaker interviewed the captured Sektar officers. They kept asking the same questions. Why hadn't the humans killed them? Why were they being treated well? Why had the humans risked everything for strangers? "Your people make no sense," one Sektar officer said. "You could have conquered our worlds, enslaved our people. Instead, you save our enemies and heal our wounded. Are you weak or strong?" "We're human," Nari replied. "Us both." The news reached the Galactic Council within hours. The emergency session was called back into order, but this time the tone was completely different. Instead of fear and anger, there was stunned silence. "The humans have defeated the Sektar fleet," Council Prime Zathera announced. Completely, the Sektar Empire, which has terrorized the galaxy for decades, has been broken in a single battle. "How many human ships were lost?" the Victari representative asked. "One," Zathera replied. "The Spear of Terra. All other human vessels are intact." The chamber erupted in whispers. The Sektar had been one of the most feared military powers in the galaxy. For them to be defeated so easily was unthinkable. Ambassador Hyunwoo stood to address the council. "The human fleet will be escorting the Kethmori refugees to safety. The Sektar prisoners will be turned over to the appropriate authorities. We ask for nothing in return." "Nothing," the Thulin representative rumbled. "You have won a great victory. Surely you want territory, trade agreements, tribute. We want the galaxy to be safer for innocent people." Hyunwoo said. "That's payment. Enough." The aliens stared at him in disbelief. In their experience, military victories always led to demands for territory or wealth. The humans seemed to want neither. "What will you do with the Sektar worlds?" Council Prime Zethra asked. "Nothing," Hyunwoo replied. "They're not our worlds. We're not conquerors. We're just people who answered a call for help." Across the galaxy, the story spread like wildfire. The humans had mobilized an entire fleet to save strangers. They had fought with incredible skill and courage, and when the battle was over, they had asked for nothing in return. On the Kethmori homeworld, billions of people gathered to watch the news feeds. Their government declared a planetary day of mourning for Commander Jajan and his crew, and a day of celebration for their rescuers. Elder Thelmai, the oldest Kethmori alive, spoke for his people. In all our history, we have never seen such courage. The humans crossed the galaxy to save us, and asked nothing in return. We will remember this forever. The sector worlds were in chaos. Their mighty fleet was gone. Their expansion stopped. But strangely, no human ships appeared in their space. No demands for surrender came. The humans had simply left them alone. On the sector homeworld, the Planetary Council met in emergency session. They had expected human invasion fleets, occupation forces, demands for tribute. Instead, they received only a simple message from Admiral Seojin. The sector empire is free to govern itself as it sees fit. However, any further attacks on civilian populations will be met with the full force of the human fleet. Choose wisely. They're not even demanding our surrender. One council member said in amazement, they could take our worlds easily, but they're letting us keep them. What kind of beings are these humans? Another asked. It was a question being asked across the galaxy. On peaceful worlds, the humans were seen as protectors and heroes. On aggressive worlds, they were seen as a terrifying force that could strike anywhere, anytime. The Thulan Empire, famous for their warrior culture, held a great debate. Their finest generals studied the human tactics, trying to understand how such a small force had defeated the sector so completely. They fight like us, General Vergath concluded, but they think like healers. They destroy their enemies without hatred, protect their allies without expecting payment. They are the perfect warriors. The Vaktari, always concerned with trade and profit, calculated the economic impact of the human intervention. The costs of mobilizing 17 ships across the galaxy would have bankrupted most species. The humans had spent enormous resources to save people who could give them nothing in return. It makes no economic sense, their chief economist reported. Unless, unless, what? The Vaktari Prime Minister asked. Unless they value life above profit. Unless they consider protecting innocents more important than gaining wealth. The idea was so strange that the Vaktari couldn't understand it, but they filed it away for future reference. The humans were clearly not motivated by normal considerations. Back in the Helios Nebula, the human fleet was preparing to depart. The Kethmori refugees were safely aboard escort vessels, heading home. The sector prisoners had been transferred to council authorities. The job was done. Admiral Seojin met with Captain Malthara one final time aboard the Eternal Vigil. The Kethmori captain brought with her a small crystal sculpture, beautiful and delicate. This is a memory crystal, she explained. It will preserve the story of what happened here forever. We want you to have it, so that humans will always remember that their courage saved 3,000 lives. Seojin accepted the gift solemnly. We'll remember Commander Jahan and his crew. They represent the best of humanity. Will we see humans again? Malthara asked. If you need help, we'll come, Seojin promised. That's what neighbors do. As the human fleet prepared to leave, Captain Malthara asked one final question. Admiral, can you tell me why your people did this? Why you risked everything for strangers? Seojin thought for a moment, then smiled. Because when someone calls for help, decent people answer. That's not uniquely human, but perhaps we're just better at it. The human ships began to depart, returning to their normal patrol routes, but the galaxy they left behind was forever changed. The story of the Battle of Helios Nebula would be told for generations. Children across the galaxy would learn about the humans who crossed the stars to save strangers. Historians would study the tactics. Philosophers would debate the morality. But everyone would remember the simple truth. When the innocent called for help, humanity answered. The sector empire retreated to their borders. Their expansion ended forever. Dozens of aggressive species reconsidered their policies, unwilling to face the human fleet. The galaxy became a safer place for peaceful beings. And in the depths of space, human ships continued their patrols, watching and waiting. They were not seeking conquest or glory. They were simply doing what humans did best, protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. The small, soft-looking beings from the blue world called Earth were not to be underestimated. They were Deathworlders, forged by their harsh planet into the perfect protectors, and they were watching over the galaxy, one rescue at a time. The end?